Alrighty everyone, today we're going to go ahead and do our week 4 notes. Let's see how it goes, alright? Let's take a look at the assignment. If you go to the assignment, it's week 4 notes. It looks a little bit different. This week I gave you a Google Doc that you can just use. So if you click on like the file, you should be able just to, each student gets a copy. So, and this is what your copy will end up looking like. Let me just make sure I actually have it ready. There we go. So this is what we'll cover today. We'll cover what block elements are, what inline elements are, what is a float clear fix inline block, what the CSS box model is, and I give you an example here. This one you can just leave, just leave it the way it is. What the math is, how you do the math for as far as figuring out how much space stuff takes up. Oop, I got a text from my wife. All right, a couple different examples that you can probably do for yourself. What kind of browser extensions you might use. That's what my wife says. Probably something about. Oh, just send me a picture of what he's doing. Cool. All right, my son's at school virtually today. Tuesdays and Thursdays are remote days for him. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, he goes to in class in the actual building. Anyways, so before I get sidetracked, let's talk about what we're doing. Let's open up the actual notes. Open up Streamlabs so I know I can see what I'm doing. So the first thing I want you to do is take a look at ErnstandYoung.com. So let's go there. It's EUI.com, right? I accept all cookies, especially chocolate chip, right? Let's take a look. Alright, so as we look at this website, we see like a nice big hero image, it's called. We've got some pictures that are all next to each other. They got some cool like little zoom effects when you hover over them. Alright. This is like a layout that this website is using, ErnstandYoung.com. So as we look at websites, I want you to think about how are things laid out? How do they choose to design their website? Now, whatever, Ernst & Young is a big company, so they're gonna hire someone. They might have their own in-house, web development team. Who knows? But
Good morning, Dr. Means. At this time, all staff should be in their first period class. Students on their way up. Once again, all staff should be in their first period middle school class.
I am. All right. Thank you, Mr. Scott. So we've got our block and inline elements. Right? There are different ways there's two different types of elements. Well, there's lots of different types, but two different ways to sort out elements for the content of your website. There's a block and inline, and I'll show you what those two things mean here in a second. So block elements, they always start on a new line. So examples that we've done of a block element include like a paragraph or an H1 or like divs and all that kind of stuff. So whenever you use a block element, if you put like a paragraph and a paragraph, it's not going to put two paragraphs next to each other on your website. It's going to put them on top of each other. So, and you can't put even if it's an inline element, you can't put other elements next to it by default. Unless you can change things around, but I said by default, block elements are one on top of another. Here are some examples, like a div, an H1 to an H6, and a paragraph. Those are all block elements. There are others besides, but these are 3 that we have used so far. Inline elements, on the other hand, right, will go next to each other. So it takes up basically as much space as it needs to display whatever content that element has. All right. So if it's if it's an image, however wide that image is, it will take up that much space. And if there's another image right next to it, it will also be to the right of it, and it will keep on going until it takes up the whole width of the screen. In which case, it will go on to the next line. So by default, again, it allows elements to be next to it. So span, we haven't used span yet, but we have used A tags. Like we said, hyperlinks will be, once we tell it otherwise, they'll be next to each other. And image tags over here. Image tags, like we said, images will be next to each other unless we say otherwise, or until it runs to the edge of the screen, in which case it goes on to the next line. So here's a visual way of thinking about it. Right, so these are block elements over here. No matter how wide they are, they take up the whole line. But inline elements, they will they'll take up as much space as they need, and if you put another one next to it, it'll keep on going, right, until it hits the edge of the screen, edge the width of the screen, and then it goes on to the next line, or the width of whatever element that it's in. Right. For example, if you have say you put all your images in a div that has a width of 800 pixels, and the width is 600 pixels, and another image is 300 pixels, right? It's more than 800, so it goes to more than the width of the div, so it would go on to the next line. The second picture would, anyway. So how can you make a block element inline? It's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We can use something called a float. Not an ice cream float, unfortunately, different, a CSS float. In CSS, there's a positioning property called float. So float determines what side of your screen or where it is you want it to, whatever property it is, or whatever element. I mean, you can make it float to different parts of the screen. Aside from the simple example of wrapping text around images, floats can be used to create entire web layouts. So I don't know if you've done in Word, in a Word document or a Google Doc, you have an image and you want the words to flow around it, right? That's an example of float. So there are 4 valid values for the float property: left and right, most commonly used. Right? None, which is the default, which means basically just wherever you put it, that's where it goes. And there's also the inherit. So that means it will inherit the whatever float property its parent has. So if you have an image that's inside of a div, and that div is float left, right? If it has the inherit property, it will also float left. This is useful when you have a lot of you generally you have some things that you want them to have the same kind of general layout, but maybe, like I said, if you have one div that's float left and one div that's float right, you could, rather than have it put up all the images inside of it to float right, you just put float inherit and just copy and paste from the other one, if that makes sense to you. Hopefully. Again, a lot of these things will make more sense once you put them into practice and actually make and create websites with them. So there's something called clear fix. So when you're using the float CSS property, the clear fix property often goes hand in hand. So sometimes stuff will kind of go in the wrong spot because with floats can be a cause of problems sometimes. So they have an example over here. So here, for example, we have our main content. We have a sidebar that we want to go on the right side, and then you want the footer to go underneath it. So we have to use something called a clear fix in order to make the footer go into the right spot. Sometimes this is necessary, sometimes it's not. There's also inline block display. So it's been possible for a long time to create a grid of boxes that fills the browser width and wraps nicely by using the float property. However, any element that is floated loses its bounding box that determines its width and height. And you have an element containing only floated elements, you could have a phantom collapse element on your hands. This forces you to create to clear your floats. All right, so by using the display inline block property, you can avoid using the clear property. There are setbacks. All right. So basically, what I'm trying to say is sometimes we're using floats, there can be problems with where things go, all right? So things don't appear on your screen the way that you think they would. So there's a couple of tricks you can do. You can use the clear fix, or we can use an inline block display. But again, these things will make more sense once we actually try using them. Sometimes you can use a float and everything will work just the way you want it to. But sometimes it doesn't, in which case you're going to have to try to use one of these fixes. All right, next I want to talk about the CSS box model. So think of every element, whether it's a paragraph, whether it's an image, a hyperlink, whatever it is, you can think of them as boxes. All right, so the box has 4 different things on it. All right, it's got the margin, all right, the stuff outside, whatever it is. Margin is transparent, means you can't see it, but you can use it to space things out. So whatever color, if there's something underneath it that's a certain color, that's whatever color the margin will have, in other words. Oops. There is the border. So it's a border that goes around the padding and the content. And we've done that once or twice with like images. We gave them a border in our CSS. Right? There's padding, clears an area around the content. Right? And then lastly, there's the actual content. So how much content, whatever, like if you're talking about text or you're talking about an image or whatever like that. Images are very easy to define, like what size you want them to be. Right? Text is a little more difficult, but you can of course put text inside of a div and make that div a certain size. In which case the text would only take up that part, right? Or a paragraph or whatever it is. You can make the paragraph a certain size. You make a paragraph that'll have a certain width and height if you want to. Or an H1 or whatever it is. So your total element width equals the width plus the left padding plus the right padding plus the left border plus the right border plus the left margin plus the right margin. And again, we've got if you look at the examples, let's look at the actual example here in our notes. All right, so here in the middle is your content. So like it could be an image, it could be a paragraph, it could be anything really. And outside that, we have our padding. Again, outside that is our border. And outside that, we have our margin. So the content will take up all the space added together. And some of these might be 0, which is fine. You might not have a border, it might not have padding, and it might not have margin. Usually it will have some by default. And the total element width is basically the same thing. I think I got these backwards. Yeah, I didn't write this. So the total element height equals the height. I don't know why they wrote width over here, but you get the idea. So the top and the bottom padding and margin and the content and the border. They'll add all those things together, and that's what's going to be your total height, not total width. And here's the picture over here. Again, so say I've got like an image that has a width of 300 and a height of 500, right? That would be the content size, 300 by 500. The padding, if there's any, usually it's like 10 pixels or something, but you can change it to whatever you want. A border, all right? It could be 0 pixels, 1 pixel, 3 pixels. You can make again the border whatever size you like. And the margin, that's the space outside of the border. You add up all those things, and that's the size of your content. So this is an example of how much space something might take up. All right, so if something has a width of 300 pixels and has some padding of 20 pixels, so it'd be 10 pixels on the left, 10 pixels on the right. So padding 10 pixels. Border is 5 pixels. So again, 5 on the left, 5 on the right. So it's 10 altogether. And a margin of 0. Then the total width would be 320 plus 20 is 340 plus 10 is 350. This is what it looks like in the CSS. Right? So we're talking about a div here in the example they gave us. Here we have the height. Right? So again, they didn't put the height in here, but let's say the height is 320 pixels. Right? So it's 320 by 320. The top and bottom padding is going to be 10 pixels, so 20 altogether, and then 10 pixels for the border, 5 and 5, and then 0 pixels for the margin, 350. All right, here they actually put it in the height. So let's take a look at, let's think about this one. All right, so the width is going to be 350. Left and right padding. So the padding is 10 pixels. So 350 plus 20. All right. Left and right border is going to be 5 pixels, so that's twice, that's 10. So 350 plus 20 is 370, 380, and the margin. Here they have the margin twice, 10 pixels and 10 pixels and then 20 pixels. And I'm going to assume that this is the left and right, and this is the top and bottom. So there's going to be more margin on the top and less margin on the left and right, top and bottom, left and right. But we have to still double it, so it's still 20 pixels. So let's say 350 plus 20 is 370, 380, so that's 400. Let me see if we got that right. And the height, let's take a look. 130 plus padding 20, 150 plus the border is another 10, 160 plus the margin 20 and 20 is going to be 200. Let's see if we got that right. 400 and 200. Oops. I don't actually, doesn't give you the answers. All right, but that's what I'm going to say. 400 and 200. This is left and right, and this is top and bottom. So you can space this out. You could even have 4. You could have different margins on different sides. So it goes in order by, if you only have 2, it's going to do left and right, and then top and bottom. If you have all 4, all right, it's going to be left, right, top, and bottom. Or you could have 1, it would be the margin for all of them. The same thing with padding and border. You can change it around to different sizes if you like. If you need to have like more padding on the right margin, you could do it that way. All right, let's take a look at this one. Here we've got a width of 250, a height of 180. I'm gonna let you do this one on your own, in your head, or on paper. Border of 3 pixels, solid gray. We don't care about the, we just care about the size of it. Padding is 15 and 5. And this one we've got 4 different things, right? 10, 20, so top and bottom, left and right. Again, I'll let you do this one by yourself. Put it on the screen here for you for a few seconds. You can always just pause it and then do the math, put that into your notes, and take a look at it. Then maybe on like Thursday or Friday, I'll ask you guys to do a couple of these in class. We'll do like a little quiz, probably Friday. There are a couple browser extensions you might want to use. Now, if you're on a DOE computer or iPad, it might not let you do it, but you can try. Right? If not, I can talk to Mr. Gerard about letting you guys use these. But I think I've added them before, but maybe try to put the extensions on. Like I said, if you're on a DOE computer, if not, then let me know and we'll see what we can do. There are other things you can do besides using extensions. But these are nice things that you can do, like PageRuler and ColorZilla. Well, I tell you what color it is we need to use, and PageRuler will let you go ahead and determine like the size of different things. Let me go ahead and let me see if I'm on. Let's do PageRuler Chrome extension. I have to spell extension correctly. PageRuler Redux. I don't know what Redux means. Let's try PageRuler. All right. Let's add this one to Chrome. Let's see if it lets me. M has blocked it. All right. Probably all extensions. Yeah, all right. Online PageRuler. All right. This will tell you like the size of different things. So what you can do is you can try rapidtables.com. So you would do a copy and paste like a screen, and then you can measure the size of different things that way. can try it like that. I'll see what I can do about getting the extensions allowed. So I think if I talk to Mr. Gerard, he can go ahead and let you guys add stuff. Because if you're on your own personal computer, you can do whatever you want, right? But if you're on a DOV computer or a laptop, it might not let you do it. You don't need this. Now, where are we? So use these if you can. Like I said, these are not mandatory, but they're helpful things that you can try. All right. So the page Colorzilla, again, probably won't let you do it on a DOE computer, but there are different things, different tools you can use that will let you, just like say there's a certain color, you want to figure out what the exact hexadecimal value or RGB value of the color is. You can basically just use like a little eyedropper and pick it out, and it'll tell you what the hexadecimal color is, or RGB or RGBA or whatever it is you want. All right, we're going to go over what our weekly assignment is. So we're going to talk about mastering the CSS box model. It's going to be our weekly assignment. How to figure out what the CSS box model is. All right, so that's it for notes. Not a whole lot today. So I will see you guys at 10:16, and we'll take it from there. This obviously is not the correct date, but I'll talk to you guys soon.